The scent of 24 long-stemmed red roses filled the air, their crimson a stark contrast to the sterile white of our kitchen counter. I placed them there strategically, the perfect welcome home present for Elsie. A goodbye present, really. I heard the jingle of keys, the click of the lock, the familiar creak of the door she'd walked through 1,000 times, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. She entered, radiating the kind of effervescent glow that had once been reserved for me, a smile playing on her lips. Then she saw the roses. The smile faltered, replaced by a confused flicker in her eyes. "Oh, Liam," she breathed, her voice laced with manufactured surprise. "They're beautiful." She stepped towards them, reaching out to touch a velvety petal, when her eyes fell on the envelope propped against the vase. Her hand froze mid-air, a premonition shadowing her features. She snatched the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she tore it open. I watched, my heart a cold stone in my chest, as the blood drained from her face. The single sheet of paper slipped from her grasp, fluttering to the floor like a fallen leaf. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the pristine tiles, a strangled sob escaping her lips. This was the moment I'd been rehearsing for weeks, the culmination of months of silent agony. Yet, watching her crumble, I felt no triumph, only a profound hollowness. I picked up the letter, the words I'd written etched in my memory. Short, concise, devastating. "I know. I'm gone. The lawyer will be in touch." Elsie looked up at me, her eyes wide with disbelief and terror. "Liam, what is this?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "It's over, Elsie," I replied, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "I know about you and Daniel." The name hung in the air, heavy with betrayal. She flinched, her guilt a tangible thing in the room. It wasn't," she started, but the words died in her throat. What could she say? I had irrefutable proof. Her phone records, the clandestine meetings, the whispered phone calls, the lies. It was a tapestry of deceit, woven so intricately that it had almost convinced me I was imagining things. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her shattered facade. I grabbed my pre-packed bag, the finality of the action a physical weight lifting from my shoulders. I walked towards the door, pausing at the threshold. "I loved you, Elsie," I said, my voice catching in my throat. "More than anything." Then I walked out, leaving her amidst the wreckage of our life, surrounded by the symbols of her betrayal, the crimson roses and the goodbye letter. My first stop wasn't the lawyer's office, as my letter suggested. It was Daniel's. I knew his schedule, knew he'd be home, preparing for his evening rendezvous with my wife. I found him in his meticulously manicured garden, pruning roses, ironically. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "You think you've won, don't you?" I snarled, my voice dripping with contempt. He straightened up, his face a mask of surprise quickly replaced with a smug grin. "Liam, to what do I owe this pleasure?" "You know damn well why I'm here," I growled, stepping closer. "You've been sleeping with my wife." He shrugged, a casual flick of his wrist. "She's a grown woman, Liam. She makes her own choices." That's when I snapped. I lunged at him, the fury that had been simmering for months erupting like a volcano. My fist connected with his jaw, sending him sprawling onto the meticulously tended flower beds. He scrambled to his feet, his face contorted with rage and shock. "You think you can get away with this?" I roared, grabbing him by the collar. He tried to push me off, but I was fueled by adrenaline and years of suppressed anger. I rained blows down on him, each punch a release of the pain he'd inflicted. Finally, I stood back, chest heaving, leaving him bruised and bleeding amongst his prized roses. "Stay away from her," I warned, my voice raw. Then, I walked away, leaving him to contemplate the consequences of his actions. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. Elsie tried to contact me, pleading for forgiveness, claiming it was a mistake, that she still loved me. But the damage was done. The trust was shattered, the foundation of our life crumbled to dust. I couldn't forgive her, not this time. The divorce was finalized, the house sold, our lives disentangled. I moved to a new city, a fresh start, leaving behind the ghosts of our past. I learned later that Daniel, humiliated and exposed, had lost his job. His carefully crafted image of respectability was tarnished, his world crashing down around him just as Elsie's had. The revenge was satisfying, in a hollow sort of way. But it didn't bring back what I had lost. It didn't erase the pain, the betrayal, the memories of a love that had once seemed unbreakable. Years passed. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I found new love, new happiness. The scars of the past faded, but they never completely disappeared. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I would think of Elsie, of the woman she had been, the life we had shared. And I would wonder if she ever truly understood the devastation she had wrought, not just in my life, but in her own. One day, years later, I was sitting in a cafe, reading the newspaper, when I saw a familiar name in the obituaries. Elsie. The article was brief, mentioning a sudden illness. No mention of Daniel. I felt a pang of sadness, a flicker of the old pain. I closed my eyes, remembering the woman I had loved, the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who had come home to roses and a goodbye letter. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something akin to peace. The story was finally over.